His final words. I am an old man now. My hair is gray, and my face has many lines. But I remember my teenage years very well. I often think about those days. One evening I was in my old house. The air was cold and the room was silent. I walked into my brother's room and looked around. His books were on the shelf, covered in dust. His old jacket was still on the chair. The room felt empty, but his presence was still there. I touched the table and my fingers left a mark on the dust. He had been gone for a long time, but nothing had changed in this room. I sat on his bed and let out a deep breath. The bed was hard and the blanket had not been moved. I remembered when we were young, sitting on this bed and talking for hours. Now everything was quiet. I looked at the small table beside the bed. Something caught my eye. A small wooden box was there, looking old and forgotten. I reached for it with shaking hands. The box was light, and the wood was rough under my fingers. I opened it slowly, afraid of what I might find. Inside, there was a letter. The paper was yellow, and the edges were soft. The ink had faded, but I could still read the words. My name was written on the front in my brother's handwriting. My heart started to beat faster. I picked up the letter and held it tightly. My hands felt weak and my chest felt heavy. My brother wrote this before he died. It was his last message to me. I wanted to open it, but I was scared. I was not ready to read his words. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The room felt colder, and the silence grew louder. I looked outside the window to calm myself. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted in orange and pink. The trees stood still, and the wind did not blow. Everything was peaceful. But inside me, a storm was growing. I wanted to hear my brother's voice again. I wanted to see his smile, but he was gone, and all I had was this letter. I turned the letter over in my hands. The paper felt old, but his words were waiting for me. I remembered the last time we talked. He was weak, but still smiling. He told me not to worry, but I knew he was in pain. Now his voice was gone, and only these words remained. My eyes started to fill with tears, but I did not let them fall. I sat up straight and wiped my hands on my jeans. It was time to read the letter. I carefully opened it and unfolded the paper. My hands were still shaking, but I focused on the words. The first line made my heart stop. My brother had written this knowing he would never see me again. He had written this to say goodbye. I took a deep breath and started to read. My eyes moved slowly over the words, taking in every letter. The room was silent, and the world outside felt far away. For the first time in a long time, I felt close to my brother again. His words were here, and his voice was in my mind. The letter had begun. The first words on the page were simple. He wrote my name in large, careful letters. His handwriting was not as strong as before. I could see the shakiness in each letter. He must have been very weak when he wrote this. My fingers traced the letters as I took a deep breath. I could almost hear his voice in my head, calling my name like he always did. But now he was only here in these words. He began by talking about our childhood. He wrote about the days we spent playing in the fields. He remembered the times we ran through the rain, laughing and shouting. He spoke about our secret hiding places and the small adventures we had. As I read, I could see those days in my mind. I could see him as a boy, full of energy and joy. The words on the paper brought back memories I had almost forgotten. He wrote about our late-night talks. When we were young, we stayed up past bedtime whispering stories to each other. He said those nights were some of his happiest moments. I smiled as I read, remembering the warmth of those times. We had no worries then. We had no idea how short life could be. He held on to those memories, and now he was giving them to me. Then, his words became heavier. He wrote about his illness. He did not speak of pain or fear. Instead, he wrote about acceptance. He knew he was leaving, and he wanted me to know he was at peace. He said he was not afraid. He told me not to be sad for him. He did not want me to carry the weight of his suffering. He wanted me to live without regret. He asked me to remember him, not with sadness, but with love. He wanted me to smile when I thought of him. He said he would always be with me, even if I could not see him. His words felt like a gentle hand on my shoulder. I closed my eyes for a moment, holding the letter close. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel his presence. He wrote about our parents. He asked me to take care of them. He knew they would be heartbroken. He asked me to be strong for them, to help them heal. He said I had always been the strong one. I never thought of myself that way, but now I had to be. He believed in me, and I could not let him down. As I reached the last part of the letter, I felt my chest tighten. He told me that life would go on. He wanted me to find happiness. He wanted me to chase my dreams and not let his absence hold me back. He said he would be watching over me, proud of everything I would become. His words were filled with love, and I held on to them like a lifeline. I finished reading and sat in silence. The room felt different now. The air was still, but my heart was heavy. I held the letter in my hands, feeling its weight. It was just paper, but it carried so much. My brother was gone, but his words remained. And in those words, he was alive. I sat on the bed, holding the letter. My fingers ran over the faded ink. The words were his, but he was gone. I looked round the room, searching for something. Maybe a sign, maybe a memory. The old books on the shelf, the jacket on the chair, and the dusty table were all still here. But they felt empty without him. The letter was the only thing that truly carried his presence. I read the letter again, slowly this time. Every word felt heavier, like it carried a piece of his soul. He told me to be strong, but my hands were shaking. He told me not to be sad, but my chest felt tight. He wanted me to live fully, but I felt stuck in the past. I wanted to hear his voice, to see his smile, to tell him that I missed him. But all I had were his words on this fragile piece of paper. I stood up and walked to the window. The sky was dark now, with only a few stars shining. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed. The trees still stood tall, the wind still moved the leaves, and the night was still silent. But inside me, everything was different. My world had shifted. My brother's absence was a weight I could not escape. I looked down at the letter again. His handwriting was familiar, yet distant. I remembered watching him write when we were younger. He always held his pen tightly, pressing hard on the paper. Now his writing was lighter, weaker. The ink seemed to fade, just like his life had. I ran my fingers over the words, trying to hold on to them, trying to hold on to him. Memories flooded my mind. The sound of his laughter, the way he always messed up his hair, the way he ran faster than me when we raced. I could see him so clearly in my mind. But the more I thought about him, the more I felt the emptiness. He was in my memories, but not in my reality. And that truth was the hardest to accept. I walked to the bookshelf and pulled out one of his old books. The pages were yellowed, the edges worn. I flipped through the pages, hoping to find something. Maybe a note, maybe a forgotten bookmark. But there was nothing. Just an old book that no longer belonged to anyone. I placed it back on the shelf, feeling the weight of loss settle deeper. I turned back to the letter, reading the last lines again. His final words were full of love, full of hope. He wanted me to move forward, to carry him with me, but not let sadness hold me down. I wanted to honor his wishes, but I did not know how. Moving forward felt impossible when his presence was still so strong around me. I sat down once more, placing the letter on my lap. The silence of the room felt heavier than before. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. The letter was a part of him, a gift he left behind. And as I held it, I knew that somehow he was still with me. I stayed in the room for a long time. The letter rested on my lap, and my hands felt cold. The air was still and the silence wrapped around me. I knew I had to move, but I could not. My body felt heavy, as if the weight of the letter held me down. My brother's words echoed in my mind. He wanted me to live, to be happy. But at that moment, I did not know how. I stood up slowly, holding the letter carefully. I looked at the small wooden box where I had found Tithe Box was old and scratched, but it had protected his final words. I traced my fingers along its edges, remembering the way my brother always kept small things inside. He liked to save little memories, a ticket from a trip, a note from a friend, a tiny rock from the river near our home. This box was more than just wood. It held pieces of his life. I placed the letter inside the box again, closing it gently. My heart ached as I did it. It felt like saying goodbye all over again, but I knew the letter would always be there. Any time I wanted to hear his voice, I could open it and read his words. He was gone, but he had left a part of himself behind. And for that, I was grateful. I sat back on the bed and looked around the room. Everything in it had a story. The books he read late at night, the jacket he wore every winter, the chair where he used to sit and think. Nothing had changed, but nothing felt the same. This was his space, but without him it felt empty. And yet I could not bring myself to leave. I was afraid that if I left, I would lose him even more. I reached for one of his books again, flipping through the pages. I found a small note tucked between them. It was his handwriting, a quick message he had written long ago. It was not meant for me, but I read it anyway. The words were simple, something about a day he wanted to remember. A sudden wave of emotion hit me. Even in the smallest things, his presence remained. I closed the book and placed it back on the shelf. I knew I could not stay in this room forever. The letter had given me something I did not expect. It had given me a way forward. My brother did not want me to be trapped in sadness. He wanted me to carry his love, not his loss. I had to find a way to do that, even if I did not know how yet. I took the wooden box and held it close for a moment. Then I placed it carefully in the drawer beside the bed. It would always be here, waiting for me when I needed I.E. took a deep breath and stood up. My feet felt unsteady, but I forced myself to walk toward the door. Step by step, I was moving forward, even if it was slow. I reached the door and paused. My fingers touched the frame as I looked back at the room. The memories, the letter, the quiet presence of my brother, they would always be with me. No matter where I went, he would never truly be gone. I walked out of the room and closed the door behind me. The hallway felt colder, emptier. The rest of the house was silent, as if it too knew that something was missing. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do next. The letter was safe in the drawer, but its words stayed with me. My brother had written about moving forward, about finding happiness again. But I did not know where to begin. I walked through the house, my footsteps echoing softly. Every corner held memories. The kitchen, where we used to sit and talk for hours. The living room, where we played games and argued over silly things. The backyard, where we once ran barefoot in the grass, laughing until we could not breathe. Everywhere I looked, he was there, but he was not. I stepped outside, feeling the cool air on my face. The sky was cloudy and the wind moved gently through the trees. I took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill my lungs. It felt different from the air inside the house, lighter, freer. I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the sounds around me. Birds sang in the distance, leaves rustled softly. The world was still moving, even if my heart felt stuck in the past. I sat on the wooden bench in the yard, the one we used to share. It felt strange to sit there alone. I ran my fingers over the old wood, tracing the marks we had carved as children. Our initials, small drawings, tiny reminders of the time we spent together. He had left so many things behind, but they were only objects. What I truly missed was him, his laughter, his voice, his presence. I thought about the letter again. He did not ask me to forget him. He did not want me to erase the past. He only wanted me to keep going, to carry him with me, not as sadness, but as love. I knew it would not be easy, but I wanted to try. He believed in me, and I did not want to let him down. If he could face the end with courage, then I could face tomorrow with hope. I stood up and looked at the sky. The clouds had started to break, and small patches of blue appeared. The wind was softer now, warmer. I took another deep breath, feeling something inside me shift. The weight in my chest was still there, but it was lighter. I knew the pain would never fully leave, but maybe, just maybe, I could learn to live with it. I turned back toward the house, ready to step inside. My brother's words stayed with me, guiding me forward. He was gone, but in some way, he was still here. And no matter what happened next, I would carry him with me, always. I walked back into my room and sat on the bed. The letter was still in the drawer, safe where I had left it. I thought about reading it again, but I already knew every word. My brother's message was unmistakable. He wished for me to keep living, to keep going. Even though I grasped what he meant, it was still hard to accept. Continuing on meant coming to terms with the fact that he was truly gone. I glanced around the room, suddenly aware of the little things I had always overlooked. The old clock on the wall, its ticking faint and steady. The books on my shelf, left untouched for so long. The photograph of us on my desk, now layered with dust. I picked it up and wiped it clean. We were smiling in the picture, standing side by side. It felt like another lifetime, like a moment that belonged to someone else. I turned my desk and took out a piece of paper. I did not know what to write, but I let my hand move anyway. I wrote about my brother, about the memories we shared. I wrote about his kindness, his dreams, his strength. The words came easily, as if he were still here, as if he were speaking through me. It felt good to write, to put my feelings into something real. When I finished, I folded the paper and placed it in the wooden box. Now, there were 2 letters, one from him, one from me. It felt right, as if we were still connected, even across time. I closed the box gently and took a deep breath. My brother was gone, but his love remained, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I hope this session was helpful. Please like and subscribe to our channel for more such interesting stories. Take care, everyone.